I'm buying a Factor Ostro VAM. Well, not quite. So I'm not actually buying an Ostro VAM, but the guys here at Lane End Studio, who are the Factor distributor, have invited me up to take me through the entire process of what it's like to be someone that does come and buy a Factor bike. We're going to get a chance to do the match ID. We're going to show you how that works, and we're actually going to spec out an Ostro VAM to fit me perfectly, and then I'm going to take it out for a ride. Guys, welcome back to the What Life. Let's roll. So Virus Velo actually have two locations, one up in Lane End, which is near Marlow and High Wycombe, but also in Norfolk. And I'm going to tell you this, you are able to come up and test ride an O2 and an Ostro VAM or whatever Factor bike you want for free. Just drop them an email, drop them a message on Instagram, and they'll help you sort that out. But if you do want to just test one out to get a feel for one, you're always welcome to do that. So we've got a few things we're going to go over today, including getting myself completely bike fitted and then set up for an Ostro VAM. So I'm going to go and meet the guys and we'll take you through it all. So we even have my bike that I built up the other day here that we can actually use the Match ID and take all the measurements and apply it to my own bike. So I guess it's worth pointing out that you can actually just come up here for a bike fit and you don't have to buy yourself a Factor to do that. You can come up here and just get yourself completely fitted onto your own bike. Okay, so this is IDMatch, and as I did mention, you can come do this without having to buy yourself a Factor. You can have your own bike fitted. 30 seconds, give me the spiel.
So with the IDMatch system, we can take measurements of the current setup, or we can use the software to get the starting point on the setup, and then we can run through the whole process and then apply it back to a current bike or apply it to a new bike if you're looking to get a new setup.
Yeah, perfect. So we're going to set me up on an Ostro VAM, then you're going to let me take it out for a ride, and it may or may not come back. Part of the IDMatch is automated.
Yes, so the first section of the fit, we basically hand control to the software. So at that point, the software is constantly scanning your position, and then it's running your numbers against an algorithm through the cloud of software, using the cloud of data, and then it's going to make adjustments based off the numbers it's recording. So we take a step back. It's purely objective, which is really nice because it effectively removes the fitter, which is a positive thing to get a starting point, because then we can apply the subjective on top of it. So it's not a case of removing the person, it's a case of using software as well as kind of a fitter or the person as well. And we can kind of bring it together based off what you're feeling and what we're seeing, and then also what the kind of software is showing us in terms of numbers and the objective measurements.
And with today's world, a lot of bikes come with integrated bar and stem, so getting the stem length and bar width correct the first time is incredibly important. And you run the black ink.
Yes,
bar and
black
stem.
ink integrated bar stem, which is similar to other cockpits in terms of it being fully integrated, fully one piece. So it makes it important to get it right in the first place, because it can be a more expensive mistake than getting a fit in the first place.
So we're all kitted up and we're ready to do the first part of the test, which is basically just taking all the measurements off my body. Let me clue you in very quickly. I'm 181 centimeters tall, 5'11". I've got an inseam. I think it's about 81 or 82 centimeters. Historically, I had ridden a 56, and my Windspace SLC that I have now is a size large. And the only other thing that might impact this, I used to climb a lot, and I have something called a positive ape index, which basically means that my wingspan of my arms is longer than the height of my body. So you can look up your own ape index, but I presume that will affect your riding position on a bike.
So I really like these automated systems because anything feels different when you're not on your own bike. It's a simple principle. It's called imprinting. You get used to something, and then when something's not like that, it always feels a little bit different and a little bit not correct. So these systems that are based on databases of information, a little bit like the Appear thing that I've done a video on previously, are actually quite useful because it takes a lot of the thinking away from you as a consumer and a bike rider. You just have to turn up and do the movements. Here you will see I have a tight lower back but reasonably good mobility in the top of my back. This means I'll gravitate towards a slightly shorter stem because I don't have that length through my entire body to pivot at the hips. You also get a chance to look at your shoes and cleat position, which again, incredibly important when it comes to a bike fit. perhaps one of the more overlooked elements of cycling.
So we're into the fun part, which is we now get to use the IDMatch system that will automatically adjust my riding position whilst I'm riding for like the next 10-15 minutes. It's going to make changes, and then based on those changes it will kind of readapt it and things like that. So that's about a 10 or 15 minute process. I think this is the bit that you guys are going to find interesting, because it initially takes a lot of the emphasis away from me as the rider or you as the rider, and you get to let the software do a lot of the predetermining to create that kind of ballpark image, and then after that it becomes about dialing it in. But it's just going to be interesting to see what the feedback is from the IDMatch system.
IDMatch is basically a huge database of other riders' information, and what the system will do is it will move you around one component at a time and then correlate back how that has changed your riding position to that big old database of other riders. The problem for me was I don't really enjoy riding down on the drops, and I never actually do it. So this sensation in itself I don't feel particularly comfortable with. So when anyone asks me, oh, how does that feel? I'm like, well, I don't really know, because I don't like doing it. But I did spend 15 minutes down the drops for the machine to do its thing, and then I got a chance to see how it felt once I was back up on the hoods, somewhere where I am more comfortable. Ultimately, we'd alternate between using the motion scan down on the drops and then coming back up onto the hoods, and just keep repeating this until we found something that became very comfortable.
So the interesting thing is that the fit that we've just done, we can now take that and apply that to an Ostro VAM. But this is where it gets really interesting, because what can actually happen is that it could be two different frame sizes that you could effectively create the same fit for that is applicable to me. So then it comes down to the actual riding experience on the different frames, because different types of frames or different sizes of frames does massively impact the feel of the bike. So we're going to basically take my fit, see which frames it might fit, and then apply that and take it out for a ride.
So we have ourselves an Ostro VAM. Now, let me just make this clear. I am now riding a size 54. The Windspace SLC that I am riding at the moment comes out at around a 55 and would probably be bracketed as a 56 if it was kind of listed in the same style as the way these are listed. So this is a 54. What we haven't been able to do, because this is part of their demo fleet, is we still have a bit more stack height on the spacers underneath the bars, and then the reach on it, or the stem length, is a little bit shorter than what we would be doing if this was custom built for me, if I was effectively a buying customer. So I still get to go out on everything that is based around the bottom bracket, like the seat position, saddle height, saddle fore and aft, is exactly as it should be, set up for me based on the IDMatch. We've taken all the IDMatch stuff and applied it to this size 54 frame that I can now go and have a quick ride on and see how it feels. And I'm looking forward to this one. So this isn't my first time on the Ostro VAM. And this is a size 54 frame, which, if it wasn't for the IDMatch, I would probably have told them I'm a size 56. And interestingly, when we went out riding the other day, when they asked me what frame size I was, that's exactly what I said. And I ended up riding that Factor, had a lovely time on it, but I did start thinking to myself that perhaps it was a bit big for me. And it's interesting to do the IDMatch and actually just have that confirmed. But there is one thing about Factors that I really, really enjoy, or that I actually think is kind of like class leading. And it's pretty simple. They have a really, really good bottom bracket, both in terms of the structure of the bottom bracket shell, the actual bike, and also the combination of the Shimano cranks, or the Shimano spindle, and the ceramic speed T47 bottom bracket. I referred to the bottom bracket that I put in my new build the other day as butter. I don't know what the step up is from butter that makes things smoother, but the combination on this bike it's out of this world how smooth the pedal stroke feels, because you have so much firmness in the bottom bracket of the design of the frame, the Ostro VAM frame, and then you have the smoothness of the ceramic spade, the narrower spindle of the Shimano crank. It all comes together to create, honestly, a mind-blowing experience when it comes to just pedaling. So I'm out on a model that's been fitted with Shimano Ultegra, and interestingly, the Gen 2 version of the Ostro VAM has moved the battery placement for the Shimano Di2, so it now sits behind the bottom bracket, which has moved the center of mass lower in the frame. And let me tell you, that makes a big difference. So one of the main things we'll look at in a moment, once we pull over, is the small details in the frame that basically result in the way that it is weighted. Combine that with the Di2 battery behind the bottom bracket, you have a very low center of gravity. Now this might be bracketed as an aero bike, but make no mistakes, it's still very light. I think the build that I'm on at the moment, which is the Shimano Ultegra and a 54 frame, comes in around 7.6 kg, or around about there. I'll try and weigh it when we get back. So here's a little anecdote for you. After going for a ride with the guys the other day, I actually went home and took my bike, my T1550, I took the bottom bracket apart, took the cranks out to check the bearings, because this made me realize just the potential of how smooth and how enjoyable a pedal stroke can feel. And again, you know, it's the combination of the components, the stiffness of the design on the Ostro VAM frame. It just creates, honestly, a different world of pedal stroke. And that's before you've even got into anything else, kind of cornering, handling, shape, size. Just simply turning the chain feels beautiful. Now, dropping down to a 54 frame does actually feel like it's made a big difference, because it now feels like when I'm out the saddle, I can move the bike left and right and just kind of, I don't want to use the term throw it around a bit, because that probably isn't in keeping with me as a cyclist, but I can certainly kind of just get a bit active with it. And it feels like the bike is now like really underneath me. It feels like the top tube, you know, the header tube doesn't come up too high. I know it's only one frame size difference, but in actual fact, the stack height on frames is probably the one determining factor that changes the most as you go up frame sizes. So dropping down to a 54, even though I've never ridden one, feels like it is a lot better fit for me. And bear in mind, guys, I'm 181 centimeters tall, inside leg like 81, 82-ish. If there's one determining thing about buying a bike, it should really be how you think that bike looks, because you have to buy yourself a bike that you want to ride every day. You wake up, you see it in the kitchen, you think, I really want to go and take that for a ride because it just looks awesome. And I've said this before, I do think Factor make really sexy bikes, but let's break it down into a little bit more detail. The seat post and then the seat tube are just slightly tapered at the front to make it a little bit more aerodynamic. And a lot of these features that make it aerodynamic also shift the weight down to the bottom of the bike, which changes the feel of the ride because it lowers the center of gravity. For instance, the chainstays are really big and thick, but then the seat stays are nice and thin and narrow. Also, there is this, again, taper to the top tube that tapers in to this nice narrow seat tube. So I think that's quite a sexy part of the bike. Probably one of the outstanding features that Factor are known for is that front end. Now, if you do decide to buy yourself an Ostro VAM, the wheel set that is effectively the, I would guess, the default standard wheel set that is purchased with the Ostro VAM is a 48-58, so 48 front, 58 in the rear, and they both have a 23 internal width on the tire. And the wheels themselves are also set up, I think they're hooked, so you can run them tube or tubeless. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about how the bike necessarily feels in terms of handling. I'm not going to throw out too many adjectives that you might see in bike review videos, because I don't think I've ridden the bike quite enough to kind of get to that level. But the one thing that I am emphasizing is the quality of products that gets put into the bottom bracket that makes the feel of actually turning the chains just, you know, really, really enjoyable. And like, it takes it and provides the kind of barometer for the top level of what a bottom bracket and a spindle should feel like. And as I said, I went home and had to take my last bike apart just to see why mine wasn't functioning anywhere near that. There's also a few small details on here that I think are really nice touches, and something that you'd probably imagine would be associated to a product that is ultimately kind of really quite expensive. You know, the Factor bar tape is nice, looks nice, feels nice. The Black Ink collaboration, so they are sister companies, so you get Factor and you get Black Ink, which effectively work together to create the package that is a Factor bike. That comes in the form of the handlebars and the wheels, and then you get the ceramic speed bottom bracket and the ceramic speed headset bearings as well. So all the products that kind of go into creating ultimately what you end up riding are bracketed as top tier high quality products. So the one thing we haven't changed too much for me is the saddle. And on this particular bike, we have a steel 7x7 saddle. The one that I am running at the moment, the current saddle, is a 7x9 carbon saddle. And I imagine that if you were to swap one out, they'd happily kind of replace the saddle clamp. Doesn't seem like it's too much of a problem to swap in and out. The one thing I just don't think you can deny is just how good this bike looks, especially in that kind of naked black carbon strip back with a gloss, and you can also get it in a matte finish. I just think both look insane. Okay, and look, I guess at this stage you could say I'm Factor fanboying, and you probably wouldn't be too wrong, but there's a slight bend in the handlebars, the Black Ink handlebars, that just makes it feel nice. Everything about this gives you the impression that you are dealing with something that's been made for a purpose and it's been created for the single reason of improving things, making things feel good, making things kind of perform good. And that's just the impression. You know, the way the handlebars are designed, the shape and form of the frame to lower the center of gravity. And that's before you even talk about aero stuff, because I might not be qualified to talk about that. But there are certainly components of this bike that add to the aerodynamics or improve the aerodynamics. So for me, this is where the Ostro VAM comes into its own. On a 2 or 3% gradient, just makes it feel flat. Smoothness of the drivetrain, the aerodynamics, yeah, all day. So I'm not too sure how much more detail I really want to go into. I've kind of given you the nuts and bolts of it. It is such a joy to ride, quite simply because a lot of care is taken over providing just really high quality individual components, and the whole is worth more than the sum of the parts. And the whole is the entire Factor Ostro VAM 2.0. And I am going to be a little bit sad to ride this one back to Veris Velo and have to give it back to them. Might see if I can wangle one for a bit. This is a lot of fun. The one thing we haven't really spoken about is cost. These obviously sit at the premium end of the market. You can spec these out however you want. OSPW, different wheel sets, whichever way you choose. But the process can end up kind of getting a little bit expensive. But my goal today was just to show you that there's more to it, or it feels like it. I don't sell bikes. There's more to it when you buy a bike like this. You know, the process becomes part of the entire package. And I'm sure with the Veris Velo guys, you know, they'd help you out if you ever needed it down the line. But we'll leave this one here, guys. Last thing to say, yes, I believe you can buy frame sets and you can buy kind of options, frames without wheels. There are different scales to which you can take this, or you can buy yourself a complete, fully loaded bike. So if you've got any questions, please do drop them down below, and I'll try and answer them as best as possible. If you do like the content, guys, please do like and subscribe. I'll see you on another one soon.